We've been hearing how the practice involves giving up acquisition and rejection. And I've been stressing that this acquisition and rejection applies to beliefs and notions. It isn't about material things necessarily. That's not an issue, I would think, for most people listening to this. It's really the ideas that we have about things that we need to give up. And we do that by being aware of our own awareness, turning the attention on itself, realizing the self with the self, that this is sometimes described as. And this is our simple awareness, which we can rest in. And this simple awareness is consciousness. It's sometimes described as the infinite consciousness, because this awareness allows us to be aware of an infinite number of things. So we say it's infinite. And I've described how we could maybe regard this Yoga Vasistha as not just directing us to this awareness, but being able to appreciate this awareness. Because this awareness isn't anything difficult. It is very subtle, but it's very common. It's where we're operating from every moment of the day. Yoga Vasistha is also about appreciation of this awareness. And this is what we have here now. Vasishta continued, "You are the knower of all, the self. You are the unborn being. You are the Supreme Lord. You are non-different from the self which pervades everything. This is your awareness. He who has abandoned the idea that there is an object of perception which is other than the self is not subject to the defects born of joy and grief." And like I said, you need to be able to give up notions and ideas, and the whole and all of perception is simply that. It's a notion. The idea that there's an object out there and a me here which somehow perceives the object out there, that's a way of thinking, that's a belief which you might actually feel you've automatically got to defend. You think, well, of course there's an object out there, but this is what we've been exploring, this is what we've been looking at. The object is here. There's only the awareness, there's only the seeing, or the experiencing. So you abandon the idea that there's an object of perception. We abandon the idea that there's an experiencer and something to be experienced. There's only the experiencing, the field of experiencing. And then you're not subject to the defects born of joy and grief. When you give up notions of an external thing, a separate thing out there, then there's nothing to lose, nothing to be happy about, nothing to grieve. There's nothing to be happy about in acquiring something and nothing to grieve about losing something. He is known as a yogi who's freed from attraction and aversion, to whom a clod of earth and a nugget of gold are of equal value and importance, and who's given up all the tendencies which confirm the world appearance. This doesn't mean to say that the yogi doesn't appreciate the difference between the two. He sees them as of no intrinsic difference, but he knows that a clod of earth you can put a seed in, and a lump of gold you can make some jewellery from or go and sell to buy some money for your conversion or something, your house conversion. So the yogi knows how to use these things, but they're of no intrinsic value to him. Whatever he does, whatever he enjoys, whatever he gives and whatever he destroys, his consciousness is free and therefore equanimous in pain and pleasure. Again, this thing about pain and pleasure, I've spoken about this before. Pain is still pain, pleasure is still pleasure, but the yogi is not disturbed by notions of pain or lured by notions of pleasure. So it's therefore equanimous in regard to notions of pain and pleasure. The yogi, unless he's trained his mind in such a way, using various yogic disciplines, will still experience pain as pain. This is what was mentioned a couple of chapters ago. Doing whatever has to be done without the division into the desirable and the undesirable, he who engages himself in action does not drown in it. He's not overwhelmed by it. His awareness is not lost in it. Sometimes you need to get absorbed in something. You turn your attention to something, and your attention then gets absorbed in that thing. But then that's been functional, then the attention comes back to itself. You're not hijacked, the attention doesn't get hijacked by whatever action you're doing. He who is confirmed in his conviction that the infinite consciousness alone exists is instantly freed from thoughts of pleasure and is therefore tranquil and self-controlled. The mind is by nature inert. It borrows intelligence from the consciousness which it pursues in order to gain the ability to experience. The mind thus comes into contact with whatever has been brought into being by the power or energy of consciousness, chit shakti. Thus the mind exists by the grace of consciousness, as it were, and it entertains various thoughts on account of its perception of this universe. The consciousness alone is its light. Otherwise, how does the inert mind function intelligently?